Hi, and welcome everybody to the Michael Chekhov Masters Talk on the Higher Ego. I am Lisa Dalton with the National Michael Chekhov Association, and I am here with
Joerg Andress from the Michael Chekhov International Academy, based in Germany, Berlin. And we have another guest in our talk for this meeting, and this is Ofir. Maybe Ofir, you can give a little word to yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Ofir and I'm from Israel, and I studied both with Joerg and Lisa, and I'm certified teacher of the National Michael Chekhov Association.
Beautiful. And this is part 2 of a series in the Higher Ego. We believe that it's one of the most important aspects of Michael Chekhov's work that he has to offer. And today we are focusing on a specific aspect of the higher ego. And I'm going to let Joerg tell you about that.
This is a very interesting relationship to the higher ego, creative individuality, to all that things what is connected with that, and the psychophysical training. And it is very, very much when we go to this one book, so we can also go to the others here on the technique of acting. It is a very important point. This psychophysical training is there, the actor's body. He brings that theme in. And for me, it's also a nice title of this book. It's a subtitle from to the actor also, on the technique of acting, on the technique of becoming active, doing something, moving, creating something, become an actor, somebody who is really bringing something into the world what was not there before. So that's an interesting part of it. How can we find the relationship to our psychophysical training, to the action, to the actor, and who is doing it? What do we develop with that?
Great. We are really investigating how the higher ego leads us into wanting a specific kind of training that is in the psychophysical world, a training that is a training that the higher ego is able to unite all the elements of.
Thinking in a little preparation for that meeting now, it came to me when I was watching or going to the Stanislavski Museum in Moscow, and then going to the house where Stanislavski was living the last years. And it was very impressive understanding of the situation. He had a house at the museum now. He had a house there, living there. There are his working room and his bedroom. But they put also into his house in one space another colleague. And this was, of course, and it was quite clear for Stanislavski itself, that was a kind of a security person, a spy, and Stanislavski was not allowed so much to go out of his house. So a little bit a situation as we have maybe in Germany now. We can go out, we can go to the park and everything, but it's not so hard. And we have not so much spice in our own flat. But it reminds me that the situations through all the times we had, maybe sometimes it was a little bit the same. Not all the time, but sometimes it came up also such stressful time. And Stanislavski was writing on his books. And so now the theme, what is psychophysical training? What is a training about? What are we doing here? Before we go to that, please, I would invite you, feel free to cross the threshold for yourself and enter that space with your center in the chest and open up your space to connect to those you would like to connect. And we be here. It's just a few seconds for everybody. Well, the nice thing, and everybody knows it, and we speak many times about it in this, on the technique of acting. By the way, that's a nice title. On the technique of acting. What is acting? Acting is doing something, becoming active. What is a technique to become active? That means I go to my will and I start to do something. I do something as an activity, not just funny game, but as an activity. And I have a kind of a technique or method for it. And I can motivate myself to become active. The technique of acting. And we have already focused that in this nice book. It starts with the imagination and concentration, and then with a creative ego, with a higher ego, with a creative personality, and all these themes. Because who is it who becomes active? It's only me. And of course, you, everybody who would like to become active. And here he is writing. I have to change sometimes my glasses. That's a funny thing that you can see everything. He says, there are no purely physical exercises in our method. That's the first sentence, the actor's body. There are no purely physical exercises in our method. These would be useless. Since our primary aim is to penetrate all of the parts of the body with fine psychological vibrations. What is a psychological vibration? What is a psychological? What do we want to penetrate into that body? And this is, and maybe we can understand from that point of view also the beginning of the book, this is from the impulses, from our thinking, the impulses from our feelings, the impulses from our will to bring into the body and to make this body flexible that it can receive it. I mean, it's very simple. But on the other hand, we know we have an idea, and now we have to do it. Okay, and then we have the idea and we wait that we can do it. And then we have the idea again, and we transform the idea, and we want to do it, but it's not so easy to do the things what you have in your mind. So how can we develop a technique, or having a technique to do that we become active in our work, become actors. This process makes the physical body more and more sensitive in its ability to receive our inner impulses and to convey them expressively to the audience from the stage. Our bodily exercises, therefore, are at the same time psychological ones. And the actor who wishes to get the right results from the suggested exercises must remember this while working on them. So sorry for reading so much, but we need our awareness so much for our training, and to hold this awareness in awake, I would say, to hold this awareness awake, we need our concentration. We have to know what we are doing, why we are doing it. And you find very, very interesting, just especially in this actor's body, always said from him what the exercise, what is the aim of the exercises are. What are we working on? We are working in a field, and with our mind, we open this field to give to our body new possibilities. Possibilities, the body has potential, but these possibilities are not consciously developed and not consciously used normally in normal life. And all this, what we do in the training, has a connection to our thinking, feeling, and willing. It is not that we do it only out of a kind of a bodily willpower with our physical body. I try to describe that we are working on in this way on a second body. We develop with a psychophysical training what I call an artistic body. That means that I can switch in the end between my using my body, switching between the daily life work with the body to the artistic work with the body. And the very important point is then that the first exercise for that is in this book here, now in this chapter, the imaginary center in the chest. So it starts from that I create a relationship to myself as a daily life person, and I create this imaginary center in the chest. And from that, I start with the first exploring how first I move with my body, and always how it feels like. It is not that I move my body, that's easily that I'm doing in daily life also, but I train from that moment on, when I enter the space of the psychophysical training, I train my full being to become aware of a training of all my actions, my doing, my movements, with a highly awareness that I sense what they are speaking to me. So that is a very, very, how to say, fluid process. It is a process what needs step by step to develop, to find where are the sensations, how can I find the sensations to understand that I am in relationship to myself through the center in the chest, perceiving what I'm doing, having a perception of it, having an imagination of it, having an understanding, having a feeling of it, and I'm doing it. This builds up also with the other exercises, step by step, in this field of our living forces. Our living forces build it up, this artistic body, because my body is a life body, it's a living body. And what are these powers, or when you would like to say energies, or what is to make my body alive? And how does it work? How is it? And in this field of these powers, we start to work in with our psychophysical training, because we need our mind, our spirit, to sense what we are doing so that we consciously can develop this body. Okay. There's another point outgoing from that, but maybe I give it at this point to Lisa and to Ofir, and to hear what they can bring to that moment. There's another very important aspect, but I don't want to overfill it now. Lisa, we can't hear you.
There we are. I will take this up, and hopefully you can hear me now, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And so thank you, Joerg. Thank you very much for that. And for those of you who know, Joerg and I love to play this sort of Eastern and Western, or European and American kind of perspectives. And so we enjoy this process because we are learning from each other. And among these wonderful words, there are images that come up from my Western perspective. And one of those is Mr. Chekhov's discussion about inhibitions that we experience. And when we experience these inhibitions, they block us from having our ability to stay connected to our creative higher self, the higher ego. And these inhibitions often come from within the everyday lower ego. And toward developing this artistic body that we aspire to, as Joerg was saying, sometimes what inhibits us from fully engaging our thinking, feeling, and willing, and fully engaging that higher ego awareness, that ability to observe and sense through the higher ego how we are developing our body, how we are training. sometimes comes because we don't have a belief in in the existence of a higher ego. And hang on one second. And when we don't believe in that higher ego, we tend to have our own energy field come out of our critical mind, the lower critical intellect. And that critical intellect tends to truncate or redirect the flow. So if we imagine that the flow of energy flowing outward in all directions, when we're in the state of allowing the higher ego to guide the impulses as we move through the psychophysical exercises, instead of emanating from this ideal artistic center radiating out, it starts, the impulse begins, and then it doubles back and hits us in this critical, am I doing this right? Is this right? And once it starts coming like this, the ability for it to radiate and for us to receive, we're receiving in our head, and we take all the radiation and direct it back into our lower ego. And this process is going to interrupt all that cultivation of the higher self. These inhibitions, these self-doubts, and so right now I'm speaking about the inhibitions that come within the being, are sometimes are parts of us that develop at a very, very early age. And depending on your belief systems, perhaps you even carry them in with you. And so in classic Western psychology, they might be disowned subpersonalities, parts of you that you don't use. So for example, I strive to be a nice person. I don't like to use my angry bitch. And so, yes, she does come flying out of me at certain points when I feel like I'm a rat cornered. But because I generally don't want to be bitchy, when I go to pick up my script and my higher ego says, "Ooh, she's a bitch. Yeah, just go for it." When I go to do it, I sense my higher ego's impulse to really express her. But when she comes out of me, she comes out not really fully, purely as the image wants to express itself. And that is because I have these blocks in my physical body and in my psychology. My own personal will does not want to be that. And my own personal feeling life isn't very familiar with it. And the only times I've been that way in the past was when I was really scared. And so that fear itself starts to trigger when the artist Lisa wants her artistic body to be bitchy. My inartistic body is blocking me. And my thoughts around that, then I get mad at myself. Oh, I'm not doing well enough. And I get this cycle around that spins around. So the higher ego training, having an awareness as we do the psychophysical training, that we are restoring to our physical body, to our thinking, feeling, and will forces, a sense of safety, of artistic safety, helping ourselves recognize that when we move with a quality of rage, or we mold or push or float, that all of these are safe for me psychologically. For me, my lower everyday Lisa, it's a safe thing for you to do. It's and our higher self continues to lead us with this expanding sense of connection and growth. So the bottom line on what I'm looking to say is, through the higher ego, when we train, we will be restoring to us all the natural gifts, thoughts, feelings, desires, and the psychophysical ability to express them in full physical expression or smaller expression, allowing, when the image is received and begins to radiate through the ideal artistic center, it will be able to express itself in a full match. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ofir to see whether Ofir has a question to bring forward about any of this.
Yeah, thank you. And I just, as you speak, I think I understand the part of the psychophysical exercise in the actor's life. Can you say a few words, knowing your mutual history? I know that you have something to say about the part of the higher ego and the psychophysical exercises in everyday life for the human being and not for the actor. If you can say a few words about that.
Yes, Joerg, do you want to take that up?
Sorry, I just got a call and I pushed it away.
Me too.
Okay. This is, of course, how to say, the connection, the figure 8, movement from inside to outside, from outside to inside, and that there's the psychophysical training. It's, thank you, Lisa, in this way, when you speak it from this point of view. On the other hand, the psychophysical training gives me just the possibility to develop, to explore my higher ego, my creative ego, because I go a step outside of my daily life being when I try to do consciously some specific trainings, and at the same time won't become aware of that, how I'm doing it, what is the echo to me, what does it do to me in my life. So this comes back to me, and I create through that, step by step, a kind of a new relationship to my thinking, to my willing, and also to my feeling. Of course, this is not only the psychophysical training, but it starts there very much with this, to have this relationship from the body side, to develop this relationship to the body side. And so this psychophysical training is, on one hand, of course, made for the actor, for the acting, to have the prepared body for all these needs for the different characters. On the other side, when I'm doing it, it is just creating something as an echo in myself, so that it is also developing myself in the other direction. From there, I get also a different understanding about myself and daily life. This is a process, I think, what is through the time going in both directions. Starting, or whatever you start with, doing one, you will reach also the other side. It is a movement what brings you again and again back to that point. I don't know now, Ofir, is that in the direction of your question was? Maybe you can specify it a little bit more.
Yes, it's starting to answer me. I think if you can say, I don't know if it's possible. I'm trying to think about myself also, but is there a point, or was a point in your life when you said that, okay, now I know that I get the benefit from it? I mean, the specific moment, or do you know what I mean? Something more specific in your life that you know, okay, now I'm feeling balanced, or I don't know, because of this. If you can feel a direct connection to your life in specific moments.
When you ask me, I can say yes. And it was several times. And I remember very much, I have to hold that short, when I was starting with that training. And this was, I started the training with the other book, with a German translation from Joerg Andress, from To the Actor. So it's a, you know, To the Actor is a little bit different structure. It starts then with des Schauspielers Körper und Psyche, Chapter 1, and then it comes to the exercise 1. Do simple, big movements. Do it with your full body, with enough power, without to strengthen too much your muscles, and use as much space you can, and so on and so on and so on. So I started to do that. I worked through that book from the beginning to the end. And just when I did these first exercises in my living room, it was in East Germany then, nobody was teaching me. I could only work with it. I did it as I understood. I get the feeling that something happens to me in my quality of living. It's so difficult to describe. And then later on, I performed, I acted out of that. I tried to find the psychological gesture for this character and for another one. And I experienced also there with these movements that I can reach this state of the divided consciousness. And these deep impressions gave me always the trust that with this way of training myself, and even when I started to train others with it, that it is on one hand healthy, that it is building positive things, it's not disturbing the human being, it just extending, is it the right English word? Make it wider, widen up this human being in all three fields, becoming more sensitive in the feeling, becoming more aware in all the thinking and perceptions, and become more flexible and free in the body. And that is my experience through that training, and especially by doing it first long time simply by my own.
I'll jump in too and say a couple things about my own experience in my personal life and its shifting through the work. And one was that when I came into the work, I was directed by a director without telling me what it was that we were doing. All I knew was that I had already done 1,000 performances on stage, literally 1,000 performances on stage in the previous 5 years. And no matter how many performances I had done, what I was doing in rehearsal by itself with this new approach was so completely different. I knew it was so far superior to anything that I'd been working on. And what was so different essentially was my high degree of self-criticism. And it calmed down. I was in a state of curiosity. And when a person has a high degree of self-criticism, it often means that they will also be very critical of the world around them. And I was. So I had a great deal of, I could think of how to do this better. There are better ways to do that. And I always had a better idea than what the people around me were offering. And not that I always imposed it, but in my mind, I always thought there was a better way to do things. And when I started working with the Chekhov technique and doing these psychophysical exercises, such curiosity came to me, and I learned, and it's 40 years now, and I still know that what I don't know. I know that I don't know. And I know that there's always other ways, and my ways are just other ways. They're not better ways. And that shift in inner self-criticism, calming to curiosity about who I am and why I'm doing this and what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, also then shifted to my perspective in the world. So you can imagine if my perspective in the world shifted to one of curiosity and rather than criticism, that a great deal of my life changed. In Michael Chekhov's terms, I saw much more beauty in the world. I traveled through the world with a much greater feeling of ease, and the form of my relationships, the form of my my body actually shifted. And but there's one particular thing that it was about the first 5 years of training with the technique. I was then training with Ted Pugh, and Ted Pugh always said, put your center in your chest. And so, and I was a trained mime, very physical theater artist, Grotowski and all that. So a dancer. So I could walk around looking like I had my ideal artistic center and was leading from the center of my chest. One day Ted wasn't available, and Fern, I think it was one of her first classes that she taught, Fern Sloan, and she led the exercise, and she said allow instead of put. She changed one word from put to allow. And in that moment, everything shifted for me. I could say that the image, this critical self that had changed to curiosity, was still quite anchored up here. And every time Ted said, put your center in your chest, I invisibly, gesturally was going like that. And I would always get this headache when I was doing the exercise. Of course, I never told anyone that it gave me a headache. But this day, when Fern said allow, she gave me permission to acknowledge what is already present in all of us. And I hadn't understood that before. I was still unknowingly living with this fear that I had to put it into me rather than acknowledge its existence and my own personal inhibitions around whether or not I had it, whether or not it was there, that power, that light. It suddenly was there. I no longer had to question. It was just an allowing process. And when I left the class, I used to ride my motorcycle to class in New York, and I had to sit on my motorcycle for 2 hours before I could feel safe driving it, because I was so expanded. I was so opened. And that really did shift my attitude toward myself as an artist. And I had known through Michael Chekhov's work, and really I had known deeply before I came to Michael Chekhov's work, that this work is an act of spiritual sacrifice, in effect, that we are here on this planet to do a spiritual deed, and that we came from Michael Chekhov speaks of how we came from the origins of spiritual activity in humanity, how the role of theater came through spiritual origins, and then sunk deeper into materialistic applications and uses. But it will return to that high spiritual function. And when we talk about why we're training, for me, part of this is I am training to help lead this theater back to the people, to give it the spiritual powers that it had. And that, of course, is leading to the theater of the future, which I believe will be our topic next week as part of where we're going. Am I right, Joerg, about that?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, but we have to touch it also now. This point, what is it about? What is the training? I develop my artistic skills, and the specific thing with the theater or with the actor and for the theater is that we are working 100% in this way with our own body, with ourself, on ourself, for something, for someone else, the character. And this triple thing that I have to work with my daily life body on stage. I have to work with it, but I don't show my daily life body on stage. That's not the aim. The aim is to show the life in all three areas, the life, the psychology of the character. But this psychology of the character is not mine. So I have to work with my body, mind and soul. I have to work with me. I have to have a relationship to myself. And I have, out of this relationship, I have to create this, what is a character on stage. And this triple of personalities at the same time. To handle that, this is the interesting thing in this Chekhov technique, what he is teaching us. Through developing the imagination, through developing what then another chapter is the atmosphere, the field of feeling, and then come to the body, to go to the movements, and from there it goes reverse, it goes back to the psychology of the character that we learn through the psychophysical training, not only working with our body, we learn also that we have in our mind movements, that we have in our soul movements, that we have in our soul gestures, that we have with our mind gestures. And to understand that, we have a very, very clear and easy to experience physicalized image. I don't know if that's a good word for it. Through doing the training, I can understand what it means when my body is moving forward, when my body is moving in 2 directions, when my body is moving in 3 directions, when I become able to hold that all together with my mind, that I can give it qualities and so on, that I am able to do it with my body. This gives me the possibility then to play on me or with me for the character, to give all that what the character needs. And then at the same time, I'm developing a deeper understanding about myself. And this deeper understanding about myself is a little bit more than only my daily life understanding about myself. Because I can, through that, what I do with my psychophysical training, I develop at the same time what? New senses. Of course, we have the sense for movement. Everybody has a sense for movement. But we learn it, and then we walk, and then we drink, take the cup and all the things. We can do the movements. We can learn different new movements. We can learn to swim and everything. And we do it also in a daily life consciousness. But through the psychophysical training, I develop a different relationship to my movements. And I develop through that a sense for movement. I develop this sense. It's a given sense, but it is also needed to develop. And when I have the sense of movement, then, interesting, the sense of movement is not only the sense in the artistic meaning for the purely physical movement. It is also the sense for the movement of thoughts, imaginations. How to bring the willpower into my imagination. When I not understand what a movement is, how can I handle this willpower as an imaginary one for the imagination when I not know how to move consciously in relation to myself, not being in it. The same for the movements of the soul. How can I understand the soul of someone else? Let's say, speak for acting, the soul of the character. I need a sense for it. I need a sense, what are the movements in this soul? And the psychophysical training in the field of the life forces gives me a deep and deeper understanding about all these movements in all the 3 fields, and developing at the same time not only my artistic body. What is the artistic body? The artistic body has also artistic senses. I develop also artistic senses. I develop new senses, and even this new senses, or the senses I develop, they are there. We have them already, but we are very often not conscious about that, developing on the senses, I can also understand life in a new way. I was asking myself, when Chekhov is speaking about the theater of future and the actor of future, how can that be possible? And you know this phrase, I'm speaking about it again and again and again, when he is saying in the end, he speaks about himself, I believe in the spiritual theater, in the sense of concrete investigation of the spirit, of the human being. But the investigation must be done by artists and actors, but not by scientists. It's a just very, very, very actual question. He says that we artists and actors will write the psychology of the human being. How can we write that when we not have understood it? And we can understand it, and this is different from the simple psychological thing that because I have experienced something, then I believe you have experienced the same. Not this simple psychological things, what is in daily life, sometimes also good, okay? But we are out of the training coming into a relationship to ourselves. And out of that relationship, we are not criticizing, we are sensing more and more and deeper how it is working, what I am doing. And through the developing of the senses at the same time, I become more perceptible also for the others. When I can clearly listen, yes, I can understand. But I understand with my new senses developed and laying in the field of the life body. And then it is possible that the actor of the future will give back to the human being the psychology of their own understanding in a different way, in a new way. That's what makes me so enthusiastic about psychophysical training. It is so much worse, but of course I need my imagination. I have to develop that I can sense it, that I can imagine even what I have done. That's all that very crossing with each other, but it's a very, very healthy process to simply to move with this awareness.
Joerg, one thing that comes to mind about that might be fun to connect with what you've been saying is Mr. Chekhov suggests that every single part that we play, even if it's just for an audition or a monologue we work on or a scene in class, has a gift for us. And when we become aware that our work through the higher ego with Mr. Chekhov's entire technique is cultivating these new sense organs, we can actually ask through our higher ego, in what way or what gift am I receiving in this particular moment? We can contemplate that to see, to develop a stronger awareness of an intent to cultivate these supersensible capabilities, these extra sense organs that we're building of perception. And so I wanted to share that with you, and also wanted to ask Ofir if he had a question out of that.
just it's maybe a difficult question or maybe a stupid one, but I will go for it.
Yay.
um, I saw a discussion on YouTube from, I think it was in Oslo, acting festival or something, and there was someone from a different approach, and I think Leonard was speaking about energy and about the life body, and then the other guy said, "I don't understand anything. What do you want from me?" It's not, I mean, I need to do action, go, and then stop. I mean, why do we need this I don't know, philosophical and digging, and why do you need it? Why do you need to be complex with it? Is it something that we can answer in 2 minutes, or I mean, we know the benefits of it from this talk, but from someone, another actor that don't learn Chekhov, he said, what is this? Why?
I'll jump in first with that, if I may. Um, that is quite simply what I hope this whole series is about for me, is helping us understand exactly why. And to me, it goes to, why Mr. Chekhov's work at all, as opposed to other techniques. And it is because, for me, in this day and age, and again, I believe next week we will talk even more about this, but in this day and age, the levels of imagination are flattening. The ability to concentrate is getting chopped, and the interpersonal exchange of human connection, radiating and receiving, we say in Michael Chekhov's technique, is falling short. And during this, we're recording this during the time of global quarantine from the coronavirus, COVID 2019, here in, on April 13th in 2020. And we are immersed in this field of communication that is anchored in isolation. So an interesting thing about it may be that we all of a sudden sense our own need to expand out and reach out, that across the globe, where there's been so much limiting the energy coming like this in the world, now that we are shut off, and the only way that we can reach is through these mechanical objects, these technological objects, maybe we're being called forth globally to allow ourselves to actually try to make face-to-face physical contact with each other, which is what the theater is about, which is what Michael Chekhov's work strives for. And we must recognize that even science today, is recognizing that we are more than just a physical body, that you don't end at the edge of your skin. Your skin is just an organ within a larger organ, a sphere, a field of energy. That personal atmosphere is an aura, and to understand that is part of you, and it can, if you take that away, you can die, you can suffocate, right, without that. So if we don't start training that consciously, that etheric force, that life force, and if we don't start training these intangible or invisible elements, then our ability to rise above and reach and permeate the people whose energy fields have contracted and condensed, we need to have our superpowers activated. And that is why just, my good old sort of physical action, the basic concept of just physical action is falling short. It fails to radiate, fails to build those sustained connections that are, and we need superpowers of radiation to be able to connect with our theater, with our audiences today. So that's my answer. Joerg?
It's very complex, and you answered very complex in a way. That's very good. And I think we can leave it for that and continue next week. Also, maybe a little bit with this, we can take this question with us and go also one more back to it. That is really a point. It depends, of course, in general. What are you, not you, Lisa, now, or you, Ofir, what is one thinking about art? And what is the mission of art, and what is an artist? And how do we see the relationship of art to the society and to the social life? And out of that, one can maybe easier, or can answer from another point of view also to that question, that it is simply not only, as David Mamet was suggesting, learn your text and do your business, then it's okay. Even when there is also something true in it, when you take it with a deep humor. So I think we could continue next Monday with that.
Yes, that would be great. I do have a curiosity if anyone with us today was with us last week or watched the video and had anything they'd like to share about whether or not they did their 2030 chairs creative individuality exercise. So is there anybody, you can either raise your hand or unmute yourself if you have anything to share. And you could also enter it into the chat if someone has something. So did anyone do the creative individuality exercise? You can also flash your hands, wave your hands, and I can unmute you. Anyone want to share anything? All righty. Well,
don't bring unsureness to the people by asking such things. If anybody has done a training exercise, and so it's so funny with that chatting. I think.
I have one thing that happened to me that connects to the psychophysical exercises. I went down to the street a few days ago with my daughter, and I was so depressed from the situation. And then I saw her, my daughter, just kicking stones, just don't watch anything. And then I looked at the trees in the street, and I said, look at this tree. He's doing this gesture, didn't say it gesture, but I said, I did something like this. And then she looked at it. She said, yeah, and this tree is doing this. And this, and somehow we got to this dialogue of just gestures. And I said to myself, this is something that if I didn't know Chekhov, it's small, but it was so important for me to get out of this situation just for a moment. So this is something that I wanted to share.
Beautiful. And that is, in fact, your higher ego is the one that becomes aware of that beauty and is able to take all those individual pieces and bring them together. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Joerg, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank
And
It's
you.
very interesting. Thank you.
see you all next
Thank
week.
you so much. Thank you.
On YouTube.
Thank you.
Goodbye and see you, everybody.